So thank you very much, Yossi. And a big thank you to Adina for organizing this evening. Mamash, thank you very much. And to the Israel Chesed Center. And for all the amazing Chesed you guys do here for Klal Yisrael. One can say really that you always see achdut, you always see unity through tragedy. For the Jewish people, but we've really seen like Am Yisrael jump to a higher level than ever before in our lifetime. I personally know so many people, my own friends, or know so many people, if not own friends, that we're just doing so much in terms of equipment to Israel, army equipment, games for kids, or all types of things and you guys know more than me what you guys have been involved in here in providing Israeli soldiers, etc., etc. And I'll get to the exact story of October 7th in a little bit, but even in the beginning, when I was called up on October 7th, my sons, we knew exactly what we were missing in the army in terms of equipment. And immediately we saw the Jewish people and the Jewish communities just come together. And there were some people who were very sad and took that to the place of, oh my God, the Israeli government, the Israeli army, so unprepared. But anyone who listens to me understands I come at things from a different approach. And even at the outset, when we saw this, yes, very sad reality, I was like, no. What we are experiencing, what we are witnessing, is Am Yisrael taking responsibility for Am Yisrael. We've outsourced our responsibility all these years, whether to organizations, to leaders, to rabbis, to the Jewish state of Israel, in terms of a government. And all of a sudden, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us a wake-up call saying, we are all responsible for each other. And that came into action post-October 7th, and still today. You're still running this Israel Chesed Center, even though we're 16 months into this surreal, 17 months, right? Into this, thank you, surreal reality that we're still living within this tragedy that none of us could have ever fathomed we would be living through, experiencing as a people, us in Israel experiencing it mamash, but as Am Yisrael, no one would have ever fathomed. We're living the good times. I mean, one thing I internalize and help people understand as well, we were blessed to probably live in the best galut of Am Yisrael in all of Jewish history. I mean, hands down, the best galut. America has been amazing. And we were living in the best years. And obviously it was our parents or grandparents who had to suffer in the beginning when they first came as immigrants. But then we got to reap the benefits. And obviously America evolved as well and became a better place for us. And what we're experiencing today, I mean, we are the front lines of Am Yisrael and the whole freedom-loving world in Israel. But the Jewish people living outside of Israel, in Chutz La'aretz, and even here in America, you guys are also experiencing the front line of what it is to be a Jew living in today's day and age. And people like to think like, oh my God, anti-Semitism was gone. Where is it coming from? And it's actually the opposite. I called it, we were blessed to live in the 80-year post-Holocaust bubble. Right? The Western world or the humanity, they were so shocked at themselves, at the depth of evil that they allowed to happen in the Holocaust by the Nazis. And they allowed it because anyone who goes to the archives of the New York Times knows that everything happening in the Holocaust to our ancestors, if it was printed in the New York Times, it was all the way in the back papers, those little side things. Never got any headlines. The world didn't care when Jews were getting killed. They didn't do anything to stop it. Roosevelt, who so many Jews put on a high pedestal, did nothing to stop it. He did not give an order to bomb the railroad tracks of Auschwitz. So the leader of the free world at the time let us be massacred. But yet everyone after the Western world was shocked, they're like, oh my God, anti-Semitism, we can't be anti-Semitic. So it was literally a taboo. You don't want to be labeled an anti-Semite. And we grew up in that day and age when anti-Semitism was a label that no one wanted to be labeled. And then all of a sudden, post-October 7th, boom. So some people think, oh my God, it's coming out of nowhere and then it's gonna go back. Let's fight anti-Semitism. But I think we're living in the natural state of Am Yisrael in the world. Anti-Semitism was, anti-Semitism is, and I like calling it Jew-hating anti-Semitism, right? And Jew hatred is going to remain forever. It's always going to be. And the biggest thing that hurts me the most is that our own leaders are not explaining properly why. They're not preparing us as adults. They're not preparing our collegiates. They're not preparing our teenagers. They're not preparing when they're elementary school already. Because it's very simple. The Jewish people represent God. Hence, we represent morality. There is evil in the world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created good and evil. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the freedom of choice. The Bchira Chovshit. Everyone has a choice. And the evil out there that some people choose and always will choose, sometimes will be evil. And the second you are against good, and the Jewish people represent good and morality because we represent God. That's what we were chosen for, to live lives not to better the world by bringing water to Africa, to better the world by being Jews following HaKadosh Baruch Hu and being a people, a nation of morality in our ancestral homeland, because that's where you are a nation, following our traditional culture and history, where our true identity is maximized on every single day, a people in its land, with its language, with its traditions. That's the natural state of the world it is supposed to be. And then the Jewish people living according to God in our ancestral homeland, representing morality, that's how we make a difference in the world. And now I'm going to bring to today. What's the major division that we had in the Jewish people, and that today is clear if anyone really sees? You have the communities, you have the organizations that they have believed for all these years, we have to assimilate. That's how we will be liked by the greater society. Not to look different, not to act differently, but be an ally with all the other organizations, with all the other movements. If we're an ally with them, then we'll help them, they'll help us. And here we're 17 months after the tragedy of October 7th and Simchat Torah, and I have yet to hear the Jewish organizations that have pushed alliances with all these other movements that are antithetical to morality and to the Jewish people and morality. They have yet to wake up and realize, again, I'm talking about the organizations, I'm not talking about individuals. Wait a second. The religious community has something. We're supposed to be different. It's only when we are different as a Jewish people connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that then we make the difference on our own people. Right? I've always taught my kids all these years, because you know, as me, you're all parents, grandparents. The hardest job in parenting, I mean, it's very hard. Everything in parenting is hard. But one of the hardest jobs is passing over the values of having to follow 613 commandments over to your children. That's not simple. And the values behind it and the importance of it. And one of the ways that I emphasize it to my kids as they were growing up, and each kid has his own journey, but for them to understand, listen, we represent something, the Jewish people. If you want your children and your grandchildren to be part of this journey of representing God and morality to the world, no matter if you're a little different, the right, the left, doesn't make a difference, but you want to make sure your kids and grandkids are going to be part of it, well, the secret sauce is the Torah. That's it. That's why we learn, Chazal teaches us, it's not that the Jews keep Shabbat, it's Shabbat keeps the Jews. It's very simple. That's the secret sauce. Forget about lamatat malachot. It's about being medayik. It's not about the medayik. By keeping Shabbat, we ensure our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren get to be part of the most unbelievable project of mankind to better the world and bring tikkun olam lemachut shakai by just being Jews. We could also bring water to Africa. We could also help the poor, but that's not the focus. The tikkun we bring is by being Jews as a nation in our homeland, representing morality. And that's why there's always going to be Jew hatred. It's never going to go away. It's impossible to fight Jew hatred. So the millions and the hundreds of millions of dollars everyone's donating to all these organizations and causes to fight Jew hatred go down the toilet. Because the second you don't a doctor, any doctors in the audience? Right? If a doctor gives a diagnosis that is a misdiagnosis, it doesn't make a difference what medicine he gives. It won't work. It won't cure the sick person. So same thing about fighting Jew hatred. If our leadership and organizations are not diagnosing it correctly, then of course it's not gonna get rid of it, and it's not gonna help our own communities, adults, youth, collegiates deal with it properly. And there's a second aspect of the diagnosis of anti-Semitism. And this is something, again, just to give an introduction, for those of you who are not yet familiar with the Pulse of Israel. So that's the daily program. We're a nonprofit organization, and yes, we're always looking for support. So if anyone's interested in supporting or bringing me into communities in order to gain further support and parlor meetings to get the messages of what we put out there, because we are different, we are unique. What we provide is a belief-based, politically incorrect, inspiring truth about what's going on to Am Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael, and the freedom-loving world. So people ask me, okay, what does that mean? Well, that means very simply, how many organizations out there are willing to tell you that support for the two-state solution, which unfortunately still exists in the Jewish world, is anti-Semitic? It's straight out. That the Palestinian national identity created by the KGB in 1964 was created in order to destroy Israel, in order to hurt America. It's not about dignity, it's not about human rights, it's not about a people having their homeland. It's about the destruction of the Jewish people. That's why the identity was created. So in order for our kids on campus to deal with the growing Jew hatred around them, they have to be able to stand up and say, you're a fake identity created by the KGB. Get out of here. But who's providing that information? Who knows all the facts behind everything I'm telling you right now in order for our kids on college campuses to know that? Which of our Jewish high schools are teaching the correct information about this? As opposed to also, we have to teach the other narrative. There is no other narrative. The other narrative is a lie created to destroy Israel. The whole Palestinian cause was created by the KGB in the 1960s to destroy Israel as a way to hurt America. Again, it's not Avi Yablo talking. This is a KGB defector from Romania who went public talking about this. Colonel Richard Kemp writes about this. It's all out there. All the information is out there. Right? What's the other thing that makes us different? And again, it's not being talked about today. And this is, I'll go to the positive for a second. What's the positive? I'm a big believer that reality is now teaching us it's okay that we have our soldiers in Gaza, as opposed to too many voices saying, no, we can't have Jewish soldiers in Gaza, even after October 7th. No, the world won't let it. No, the world does. No one wants the Arabs, so they have to stay there. Right? And then Lebanon. Wait, get out. We have to get out of Lebanon. We can't be occupiers in Lebanon. Get out of southern Syria. We have to be out of there. I want my leaders today, I want my rabbis today, I want every rabbi in every synagogue in every Jewish school, especially the Orthodox schools, to be teaching the kids, these are the biblical borders of Israel. Obviously, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants it to be that way, and it's supposed to be that way. We're supposed to be in Gaza, we're supposed to be in the lands of Asher and Naphtali in Lebanon, we're supposed to be in Syria. They're all part of biblical Israel. I want our kids empowered and proud of their Jewish identity and the biblical borders that we're supposed to have one day. Is it going to happen today? I don't know. What's going to happen for it to happen? I don't know. But it's not something to be embarrassed about. I don't want my kid embarrassed walking on college campus. No, we have to take care of this in Gaza, but then they'll live there in peace, and then we'll come out, and then everything will be good. No, we're only in Lebanon in order to destroy Hezbollah. Then we'll get out, and everything will be good. But they force us to go in. No, I want my Jewish kid today. What are you talking about? That's biblical Israel. God gave us these borders. One day we're going to have it. And right now the world is proving to us, and our enemies, what I call our Islamo-Nazi enemies, are proving to us that we have to be there. Not just for us, but I don't know how many of you know, and maybe you all do, but the Druze in Syria, in southern Syria, officially requested Israel to remain there in order to protect them, because they know the only power in the Middle East that is able to protect their lives. They don't need citizenship. They don't want equality. They want to live. That's it. They just want to live. And the only power in the Middle East that can protect them so they can live and not be afraid of being killed at any given moment, either by the Turkish-Syrian Sunni ISIS Taliban that just took over the country, or by the Iranian-supported Shiite Hezbollah and their allies, the only one who can protect their lives is the Jewish state of Israel. So our presence in southern Syria, in southern Lebanon, in the areas of biblical Israel, is not just to protect Israel. It's not just because God told us that's where we should be living. It's also to protect all the minorities in the Middle East who want to live in peace and who don't want to kill us and don't want to be killed either. So I'm a big believer that, one, we are seeing the Geula process unfold right in front of our eyes, and the people living this and feeling it, whether they understand it to the depth I'm talking about it right now, but they're feeling it, are those of us blessed to be living in Israel today. And especially the youth. Especially the youth. I didn't bring it tonight, but I like to hold up and show, and then when I spoke in the Young Israel Fuel this Shabbat, I had it, my uniform in the army. And on this uniform, I have different army patches. And one of those army patches is the patch of the Beit HaMikdash, and another patch is the patch of Mashiach. And you have thousands of Israeli soldiers fighting this war wearing those patches. Not all of them, not even most of them, doesn't make a difference. You got thousands of them. And I'm blessed to be handing out these patches to different units and different soldiers as well. Why? First of all, why are they doing it? Well, they're doing it because when our soldiers were in Gaza, I'll tell you this story, okay? It's the story of a mother of an Israeli soldier who fought in Gaza. Her son came out, and they're not religious, secular Israelis. Her son came out, and the first thing he did when he returned home, he put up a picture of the Beit HaMikdash on his wall in his bedroom. And his mother says to him, what's this about? We're not religious. You never talked about, we don't talk about this. You never talked about, we don't even keep Shabbos. Why are you putting a picture of the Beit HaMikdash? He goes, Mom, you don't understand. Every single house in Gaza had a picture of the Temple Mount with their dome. We found books talking about and pamphlets that their war is about taking over and conquering Jerusalem. The name of the war is what? The Al-Aqsa flood. That's what this war is about. They know what they're fighting for. Our enemies know what they're fighting for. They're fighting over the Temple Mount. They're fighting over Jerusalem. They're fighting over taking over our homeland. We don't know what we're fighting for. They're fighting over our Temple Mount, and we don't know what we're fighting for. We're fighting just to defend our lives. No, we're not fighting to defend our lives. And that's why thousands of soldiers have now put on these patches, and this soldier put the picture of the Beit HaMikdash up. We're fighting over regaining Jewish sovereignty, not only of our homeland, but of our identity as a nation. We're not supposed to live in Israel without the Beit HaMikdash. We are supposed to rebuild it. We all sit in shul, daven 3 times a day, maybe twice, maybe once. And 3 times a day, those of us who are davening 3 times a day, are talking about the rebuilding of the Beit HaMikdash. How many people actually have kavanah? Actually have kavanah that they want to see the rebuilding of the Beit HaMikdash in our time? How many? I know before, I internalized this in my later years of life. I really didn't either. Just it's hard to have kavanah over everything. But we say it 3 times a day. It's not just singing the song Yibana, Yibana, Yibana Beit HaMikdash. It's mamish, we're supposed to have kavanah to do it. And obviously, in order to make it happen, we have to be there. And we have to do what's necessary to make it happen. So again, I don't know, it's going to come down from heaven, we're going to build, I have no clue. But I do know I want to be part of the people focused on trying to build Am Yisrael up to be ra'ui, to then be able to be zoche and merit the rebuilding or seeing the Beit HaMikdash. And I'll be totally honest with you. I tell my kids that hopefully me and our generation, but their generation, they're going to see the rebuilding of the Beit HaMikdash. It's not that far off. It really isn't that far off. And how many rabbis are talking like this today? And all you have to do when you're in Israel and when you come in on the missions and you see, despite October 7th, you see the unbelievable resilience of Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael today. And we're still living the tragedy. It's not over, and it's never going to be over. And we're going to be a nation with PTSD. And it's not going to end, of all ages. But we sort of forgot that we're the Jewish people. And we forgot that just 2 generations ago, Jews lived and survived, those who survived the Holocaust. And yet, look what they did for us. Now you have the 5 towns. Despite what just happened to Am Yisrael 80 years ago. We're a people of survival, of thriving, of being victors and overcoming and doing good and not just remaining and wallowing in our victimhood. And you see that today in Israel in an unbelievable way. So part of what we're about is getting these messages out there to inspire fellow Jews. So again, if you're not yet a subscriber, go to pulseofisrael.com and click to subscribe for this daily belief-based, politically incorrect truth about Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael today. And if you want to be able to bring this message to your communities, to your kids, contact me. Let's make it happen. Now let's take a step back. Okay? People asked me about my trip to Washington, D.C. And this is very, very important to understand. We're definitely living through messianic times and redemptive times. The Jewish people and the Jewish state of Israel have never been in a stronger geopolitical, I'm talking real politics right now, put belief aside. We've never been in a stronger geopolitical state in all of our history since the Tanakh. Never. And I'll explain to you why. But before I explain to you why, I just want to tell you how miraculous this is. And again, who's talking these things? To help us understand on a daily level and really appreciate the miracles taking place all around us that are allowing us to be in the state we're in. First of all, we're winning this war even though we have not won it yet. Why? Well, I'm going to list off a number of miracles. Miracle number 1, all right? Iran planned to destroy Israel by attacking us from Hamas in Gaza, by Hezbollah in Lebanon, by the Houthis, by their missiles. They had a comprehensive plan to attack us all at once. And the miracle is, and only God knows, that Sinwar of Hamas decided to attack without coordinating first with Iran. If that day would have come, and they would have all attacked together, I would not be standing here today. And there would probably not be a Jewish state of Israel. Definitely not as we know it right now. So the miracle is, Sinwar decided to attack alone. Miracle number 1. Miracle number 2, the army was not ready. The army was not there. I am a proud Israeli soldier. I'm still serving in reserves, even though my wife and mother say, what are you, nuts? You could have stopped years ago. And the reason I tell them is because I believe, as a student of Jewish history, the fact that I live in a generation where Jews are able to stand up and defend ourselves, defend our nation, defend our homeland, that is a zchut that I don't want to give up. I'm going to take advantage of until I'm no longer useful to my unit. And that's the message I give over my kids. So hence, I'm called up for my 4th stint of IDF Miluim in July. Right? And then back in November. They already know. This is the generation that we are raising our children to literally be King David-like warriors in the land of Israel. So even though the army wasn't ready, and that's a whole different talk to explain why the army wasn't ready or wasn't there, and it took them hours, and it's the saddest of the sad to internalize that, and again, that's a whole different talk. Tens of thousands of lives were saved because hundreds of King David-like Jewish warriors, whether they had a gun or they didn't have a gun, or they had an IDF uniform or didn't have an IDF uniform, they ran down south into the fire and fought those Islamo-Nazi terrorists in the kibbutzim, in the communities. And this is one of the saddest things, but it's so true. Only 1,200 innocent Jews were massacred that day. It was supposed to be tens of thousands just by Hamas in Gaza. They were planning on going to Ashkelon, Tel Aviv, other army bases. It was going to be a slaughterhouse. And it would have happened because the army was not there. There's one soldier who ran kilometers. He ran by foot. And it took him shorter time to get down and fight for the tens of kilometers he ran to get there than it took to get a helicopter or a plane in the air and do something. That's like how insanely sad that Simchat Torah attack, invasion, massacre was. But I'm focusing on the miracle. And the miracle is that only 1,200 were killed and not many more. And then here's the third thing. Here's a third miracle. It's not really a miracle, but I call it to fit into this talk. There's a man by the name of Aviad Bechar. He's the father of two, married, lived with his family in one of the communities on the Gaza border. And unfortunately, on that day of Simchat Torah, October 7th, Hamas terrorists came into his home, were shooting from his safe door. He was one of those people literally holding the door closed to make sure they couldn't get in, but they were shooting through the door. And there, on that day, his wife was killed in that room, his son was killed in that room, and he lost his leg. Just there, and then they were laying in there for hours until they were able to leave and be saved. He has been interviewed countless of times. He's been very vocal since then. And one of the things he says, and forgive me if I don't say the exact lashon, but I have it with English subtitles to share. He goes, we are lucky, and he says personally, I was lucky that what happened on that day happened to my community and our communities outside of Gaza, and it didn't happen to the communities outside Yehuda and Shomron, Judea and Samaria. Like, why? Because if it would have happened out of Judea and Samaria, right, where I live, right, if the same amount of terrorists and non-combatants, it wasn't just terrorists, it was plenty of youth and old people who came in and took part in the murder and the burning and everything, same amount of terrorists, same amount of people killed, same amount of rape, same amount of everything, because I would have said, oh, it happened because we live in Judea and Samaria. It's our fault. We got to get all the Jews out and then it won't happen again. Only because it happened to me, this is Aviad Becher talking, in my community, in the communities outside Gaza, did I internalize, it's not about where we live, it's about who we are. And now I don't want to see any Arab on another side of a fence in Gaza, because this is an evil that we can't live near anymore. So the miracle is that if it happened, for whatever reason, Hamas decided to do it out of Gaza and not out of Yehuda and Shomron. Because if it would have happened after Yehuda and Shomron, you would have seen a whole political campaign, same massacre. You would have seen a whole political campaign from the Israeli left and from Jewish organizations in America. Two-state solution. We got to expel all the Jews from Judea and Samaria. We got to separate. That's the only solution. There would have been no unity to stand up and fight all together this war like we have been doing today. So that, in a sense, is a miracle of what happened, even though it's still horrible. So those are the three miracles of October 7th. Now let's go to the miracles of throughout the war. International pressure. We're fighting this war despite that, even though they wanted to put up our prime minister and defense minister up on trial in the International Criminal Court, right? Biden administration pressure. I mean, again, it's coming out little by little. I'm sure more is going to come out. They literally gave money to Hamas after October 7th. All right? The Biden administration was literally funding Hamas to stay in power, and that's even without all the aid they forced us to give in. And then also, they had a silent embargo, arms embargo on us. All right? They wouldn't give us arms. We're supposedly the good guy, but our ally America was withholding weapons from us, spare parts, etc., in the middle of an existential war, helping our evil enemies. Right? So yeah, the international pressure that we're winning despite that. We're winning despite 15 months of the Biden administration that was working against us, wanted us to lose, was helping our enemies, and the senior leadership within Israel of the IDF and the intelligence also did not fight this war to win. Let's just say it like that. It's much worse, but let's just say it like that. Every major operation in this war that Netanyahu and the government decided to do, the senior leadership of the IDF and the intelligence were against. What's the major operation that literally changed the trajectory of the war? Major operation? The beepers and the walkie-talkies. We took out the high command of Hezbollah and the medium command. They were neutered. And by neutering the senior command of the Hezbollah, we neutered Iran because we were always afraid to do anything to Iran because then Hezbollah would attack us. Once we neutered the senior command of Hezbollah, now it was only afterwards that then we attacked Iran back. All right, if you remember everything. Because the Hezbollah was a proxy of Iran that they used in order to warn us, don't you dare do anything to us because we're going to shoot millions, thousands of missiles at you. And the way we stopped Hezbollah and Iran was with that unbelievable James Bond-like miraculous beeper walkie-talkie operation. And guess what? The head of the intelligence was against that operation. The head of the army was against that operation. All right, not only that, the defense minister was against that operation because he was working with them the whole war. Taking out Nasrallah, same thing. The war in Lebanon, our soldiers, including my own sons, I've had two sons who've been fighting in Gaza, the war in Gaza. I've had two sons who fought in Gaza, two sons who fought in Lebanon. One has been in and out of Syria. Now he's back in Lebanon. The war in Gaza, we're winning despite a horrible senior leadership of the army and the intelligence. I'm very simple, I'll explain it. And still, we're fighting and winning despite that. Okay? 101, war. You want to defeat an enemy, you want to push them away, you want to make sure they don't come back to shoot at you. Well, you do exactly that. You push them away and make sure they don't come back to shoot at you, right? Which means you go in a few miles, you push everyone away, make sure that that's clean, and you continue, and you continue. And then you clean the area, and you ensure that there are no more terrorists. And Gaza is tiny. All of Israel is smaller than New Jersey. Gaza is, I don't know, Gaza is Bergen County, I have no clue. It's tiny. That's all you have to do. But our senior leadership of the IDF decided on a different strategy. No, we don't want to be looked at as occupiers, right? We don't want to stay there. The Biden administration won't like it. The world won't like it. We're just going to go in and come out. Go in and come out. Guess what happens when you go in and come out? They come back. I can't tell you how many soldiers' lives were lost at places we already cleaned out because of this horrific, immoral military strategy. And again, the government and Netanyahu said, get rid of Hamas, win this war. But it was the senior leadership of the IDF and the intelligence that did not execute on purpose. They came up with their own strategy and a failed strategy. And so again, I just listed 6 miracles of how we are winning this war, even though it's not won yet, despite all those things. Right? There you go. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? Not only HaKadosh Baruch Hu here, it's all HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but the only reason, right, and I could be wrong on this, but I think the only reason President Trump suggested that the solution is for all the Gazans to leave is because he saw Gaza was destroyed. Well, guess what? The senior command of the IDF did not give orders to destroy all of the communities and homes. It was the soldiers and officers on the ground who did it without receiving those orders. Meaning, if the orders of the senior command were followed to a T, and there would have been none to little destruction of those homes and cities in Gaza, you would not hear a U.S. president sounding more kahana than kahana. It's only because of our soldiers on the ground who did what they knew was necessary, working even despite orders or not orders of how to really win the war. And despite all this, we, the Jewish people in the Jewish state of Israel, are in the strongest geopolitical position ever in all of our history since Tanakh times. How? Now you have to go deeper, beyond the headlines, okay? Because we're not, I'm a big believer, you can't trust the media, even the Jewish media, okay? There's much deeper issues out there than many of the journalists and papers that we read on a daily basis understand or want to report upon. Now listen to this, right? And you tell me if you've heard this before. Why am I saying we're in the strongest geopolitical position ever since Bible times? First of all, historically, why was the land of Israel always conquered? Conquered by one, then conquered by another. Why? Why? Think geography. Why? Trade routes, right? Israel is what connects Asia, Africa, Europe, right? It was the linchpin of the trade routes of the ancient world, not ancient world, of the whole world until modern times, in a sense, right? Now let's jump to today. According to the new Trump doctrine, who's the enemy of America today? China. China. And what kind of war is it? It's not a military war. What kind of war is it? It's a commerce war. It's a commerce war. And what is the biggest challenge that the Trump administration wants to accomplish right now in order to beat China at this commerce war? It's getting an alternative trade route to the east, which today is run and ruled by China. Guess what country is the bridge to allow for America and the Trump administration to develop this trade route to the east? It's going back to biblical times, folks. It's going back to the history. It's Israel once again turning into the linchpin of U.S. foreign policy based on the Trump administration in order to beat China. So now, even though I'd love to say and that Trump is doing everything he's doing right now and saying everything he's doing because he loves Israel and he loves the Jews, and I think he does love Israel and he does love the Jews, but even with that, the real reason Israel and Gaza are so important to President Trump right now is because he wants Gaza, in a sense, I imagine, for there to be a port built there that then ships from the West come to a Gaza port when Gaza is going to be under Israeli control. I mean, you could say America, 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 but they're not sending any American soldiers. That's why I'm not getting involved in, oh, is this halakhically correct or not? Why, Mishigas? Why are we even dealing with that? No, it's not going to be the 52nd state of America. No, we are going to make Gaza Jewish again, and America's going to have a port. Maybe you'll bring some Saudi Arabian money to build some projects there, a nice golf course. I mean, I know me and my kids, we're on a list in Israel that to have homes in Gaza one day when we're finally able to rebuild there. That's something my kids know since 2005 when I was active against what I call the expulsion. And I knew we would have to be back there because it was insane and it's a disaster and should never have been happened. And we had to come back there. So I've always been telling them since they were little kids, one day we're all going to be living in Gaza, all have homes in Gaza. So we're on a list. Okay. In the meantime, there'll probably be a port there in order to allow Trump, under his foreign policy, to develop this trade route: America, Israel, Saudi Arabia, India. So anyone who's telling you, or any time you read a journalist or an op-ed or a rabbi saying, oh, Trump might turn on Israel. No, he's not. He's not. He might not do everything we like all the time, Vadai, but he's not going to turn on Israel because we are central to the new foreign policy doctrine of America. And therefore, he needs Gaza to be safe and terror-free, and he needs Israel to be safe and terror-free. Are these not Geula times? When the biggest empire in the world now sees Israel as essential to its foreign policy, after we experienced a horrendous anti-Jewish, anti-Israel administration that knew how to talk nicely to the Jews. Oh, yeah, we love you, we love Israel, but yet in its actions was totally against us. And we escaped, and forgive me for going political here, but I'm doing it in an emunah-based perspective. We literally escaped a continuation of that horrendous administration that would have been even worse. It would have been worse for our kids on campuses, would have been worse for Jews on the streets, and would have been worse for the Jewish state of Israel. Again, you hate Trump, you love Trump. Doesn't make a difference. M'prinati, it is a miracle. HaKadosh Baruch Hu literally did a miracle that he won the elections. It's a miracle. It saved Israel. It saved humanity. Am Yisrael will continue anyway, because we're Am Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking after us. But if you look at things in a historical perspective and with an emunah lens, it was literally a miracle. And yes, it saddens me terribly that there's still plenty of Jews, even Orthodox Jews, who still would say that they're not pro-Trump, and whether they voted Harris, they didn't vote Harris, or they didn't vote for anybody. Makes no sense to me. Makes no sense. But the positive, oh my God, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is running the show where despite all these years of challenging of how to stand up for ourselves and literally defend our lives. We were not allowed to defend our lives. When in the history of mankind did the world support giving aid to an enemy in the middle of a war? Give me one. Give me one example. No, only when it comes to the Jews. We're the only ones who can't defend ourselves. The only ones who can't win a war. And we were literally saved by that November 5th election. So, these times we are living in are unbelievable. But who's talking about this? Who's giving this perspective, this understanding, this empowerment? Instead, what do we get? We get the daily headlines demoralizing us. And even demoralizing us with the hostages. And I'll give you one example of how we're being demoralized with the hostages. And this has to do with Jewish history. We have in the Torah a story of the Jews going free, right? Different type of hostage. We were slaves in Egypt. What is the marketing tagline that Moshe Rabbeinu used? Let my people go. Not bring them home. Okay, no, let's go even further. Let's go even further. I grew up living in Manhattan in the 70s and the 80s. I remember the Soviet Jewry movement. I remember going to the protests outside of the United Nations, outside the Russian compounds, right, or the Russian embassy. What were we screaming? Let my people go. And then all of a sudden, the Jewish people in the Jewish state of Israel decide to develop a different marketing tagline. Not based on our Jewish heritage, our biblical history. No, bring them home. I'm an organizational psychologist, and you don't really have to be that much of an intellectual psychologist to understand what is the underlying subconscious message of let my people go. Someone else is holding them. Let them go. You're responsible. Let them go. The onus is on you. What's the subconscious message of bring them home? The onus, the responsibility, and of course it's the responsibility of the Jewish state to free Jews, but the responsibility, ki'ilu, as if they're the ones at fault, is the Jewish state of Israel. And so few Jews understand the sophistication of this neo-Marxist entity that exists within our ranks in the Jewish people. And we've had it for years. And it exists in Israel and exists in America. And unfortunately, I mean, you can call it the political left or the ideological left, progressive, really regressives. But it exists. And again, how many of our Jewish organizations are calling this out? How many of our rabbis and communities are calling this out? And you can't get rid of evil by ignoring it. You can't educate your children how to deal with evil if you ignore it. And again, I'm not saying these fellow Jews are evil, but the manipulation they do of concepts, of our morality, of our Torah, of our mitzvot. Yes, Pidyon Shvuim is the most important mitzvah. Yes, it's the most important mitzvah. But we also know, I mean, again, I'm no rabbi, but according to halacha, there's definitely a machloket, if not a clear isur, to pay a price that endangers other Jews. Halacha is clear. Now you could say, okay, now it's a state, and there are different issues here, and it's about a unity of a people. Okay, but where in the world is the Jewish, at least from community, standing up with a clear voice? Listen, this is a major problem. It's not pashut. It's not pashut. Endanger 10, and it's not just about endangering 10 million Jews in Israel, or whatever, 10 million Israeli citizens, whatever, 7 million Jews. The second Israel, the Jewish state, appeases evil for us to pay a huge price, not for kidnapping soldiers, for kidnapping babies. What, you don't think the blood of any Jew all over the world walking on the street of New York or Paris or London or Melbourne is now more dangerous? Where are the leaders? Where are the organizations? Right? We've been neutered as a community to even stand up for morality. And of course we should fight to free the hostages, but it's how you fight. I haven't gone to one protest in Israel by the hostage movement. And I remember I was at Hostage Square for the first and only time, the day the first hostages were released just a month and a half ago. And I bumped into a friend of mine. He was actually a kid on Machach, when I was an advisor on Machach years ago. And he was like so emotional to be there. And I'm like, it's hard for me to fake. So he goes, don't you feel like special being here? Like, how many times have you come here? I'm like, I have to be honest with you. This is my first time and I don't really want to be here. I only came here because I'm supposed to be interviewed by a media outlet. Otherwise, I don't want to be here because they turned and hijacked the hostage issue into a political anti-government issue. And hardly anyone knows about it. So, and again, I have friends part of the movement and I argue with them all the time. I'm like, if you really cared just about the hostages, right? And you were not motivated by your political agenda and your anti-Jewish value agenda, then you would be protesting outside the United Nations. You'd be protesting outside UNRWA. You'd be protesting outside the International Red Cross. You'd be protesting to stop the aid. But no, you don't do any of that. All of your protests are outside the Knesset and against the government and calling Bibi a murderer and that he wants them to die in Gaza. Okay? So again, you don't feel this as much outside of Israel. Because here, the unity is all being swept up, so bring them home, bring them home, bring them home. And I don't have any taina against anyone who's involved or saying this because it's been used as the marketing campaign. But we, the Jewish people, have been hijacked. And we're always being hijacked. And our value system and our mitzvot are always being hijacked to go against our own basic instincts of what we have to do necessary to protect ourselves. For instance, I'll give another one. Any sane person would say, oh my God, and I started with this, of course we have to stay in southern Lebanon. No one is going, not no one. Majority of the Israelis from the northern border are not going home until Israel is going to be on the other side of the Lebanese border. Because that's the only way we're going to ensure Hezbollah is not going to be there. Because even part of the Lebanese army, and I had a conversation with a congressman this week. He was in Lebanon. Oh, this is hysterical. I'll give you this one, right? So this congressman was just in Lebanon the day before Nasrallah's funeral, right? And he's there as a representative of the American government, and the American government is giving millions of dollars to the Lebanese army, right? Because according to the American government, Lebanon is an ally, or we want to make it as good as possible. So we're giving them the money in order for them to take control over southern Lebanon. So therefore Hezbollah will be neutered and there won't be a danger anymore, right? So he's there, and he goes, I'm in Lebanon, and talking to the prime minister of Lebanon. He needs our help, and he needs our money. And he goes, I need your help in order to fight Hezbollah and stop Hezbollah. And he's there thinking, okay, Israel destroyed Hezbollah, right? There are only a few thousand Hezbollah soldiers, fighters, terrorists left, and the Lebanese army could be in control, right? He's in Beirut. He goes, there are hundreds of thousands of Hezbollah people in the streets of Beirut. Because I was in shock. That was totally not what I understood about the situation. So, but again, he is lucky to have actually been there and seen this with his own eyes. So he's impressed and has a better understanding, okay, we might be wasting our money giving money to the Lebanese army. It's not going to do anything. Even if the whole army, which is not infiltrated by Hezbollah, because it's a religious thing, so Hezbollah are Shiites, so you have plenty of Shiites who are in the Lebanese army who help Hezbollah all the time. So he sees it with his own eyes. But you have all the other congressmen and senators and governments around the world. They're like, oh, no, we can work with the Lebanese government. Let's help Lebanon. It's impossible to help Lebanon. According to Lebanese law, there always has to be a third Shiite, a third Sunni, a third Christian, I think, something like that. So the Shiites are always going to have power in Lebanon. And that means Iran's always going to have a stake in Lebanon. And even if the Iranian regime in Iran falls, they're still going to have a stake in Lebanon. All right, but how many people understand reality, and how many, again, of our leaders and organizational leaders and educators and journalists have this understanding of reality, of reality? Now, I'll give you another reality, what we were talking about with the congressmen and senators. And this is really surprising, right? We were there talking about sovereignty in Judea and Samaria, why it's not just necessary for us, but by the Jewish state of Israel finally having sovereignty is also extremely critical for the defense and protection of America. Why? Now you have to, again, go to the diagnosis. You have the doctor and the patient. Who's the enemy? I mean, you can only win a war if you know who the enemy is, right? So unfortunately, many of the leaders in our world, and again, many within the own Jewish community, who's the enemy? We can't allow the Islamic regime of Iran to have nuclear weapons. Why? Because the Islamic regime of Iran is the enemy. Hamas, we have to destroy. Hamas is the enemy. Hezbollah, we have to destroy. Hezbollah is the enemy. Guess what? Tomorrow, we destroy the nuclear reactors in Iran. They can't have nuclear. We even have regime change in Iran. We get rid of Hezbollah. We get rid of Hamas. Israel's in all these places, right? Guess what? And all the billions of trillions of dollars that the Islamic regime of Iran has gotten all these years, have they invested that in the Iranian people? What have they invested it in? Well, that too, but I'm going to go even further than you. They've invested it in educating and their ideology, their jihadist, Sunni, or for them it's Shiite. Well, they do the Shiite, jihadi ideology, and Qatar does the Muslim Brotherhood, Sunni Islamic ideology, investing in developing Muslim communities in Europe, in Africa, in South America, in North America. Where do you think all the money is coming from college campuses in America? We know Qatar is definitely there. Whether it's Iran, don't know. It's definitely Qatar. They've been doing it for decades. For decades. So we, the Jewish state of Israel, we succeed in taking out Iran, and now the Iranian people are peace-loving people. They're now Israel's biggest ally, because one day we're going to be allies with Iran in the Middle East. We get rid of Hezbollah, we get rid of Hamas. Guess what? The ideology is going to be live and well, killing Americans, killing Europeans, killing Canadians, killing Australians. The enemy is an ideology. It's not a terror organization. It's not a regime. It's a jihadist, Islamic, religious ideology of 1,400 years. Now, not every Muslim is a problem. But you don't need every Muslim to be a problem for this to be a problem. And again, where are our leaders? Where are our rabbis? Where are organizations? Instead of talking about allies and partnership and community building, understanding that part of Islamic culture is lying in order to attain their ultimate goal of control of the world and subjugation of all non-Muslims. It's written in the Quran. Right? It's there. It's there. And we're all in danger until we understand that this is what the ideology is we're all up against. So here we're in Washington telling them that's why you need us to have sovereignty. Because this is an ideology that only cares about land. They don't care about their children. They don't care about their mothers. They don't care about their grandmothers. Hamas right now is still celebrating, thinking they won the war. They're winning the war against us. Despite all the destruction we brought upon their cities and towns, despite all the children and mothers and grandmothers that be killed, they are celebrating. They think they won. Because to them, it's land. They're still on that land to kill us another day. So how do you defeat an ideology that believes they want to overtake your land to kill you and subjugate you? You make sure they're not there on that land. And you make sure it's under your sovereignty and not under their sovereignty. So we beat this war, and we have total victory in this war, not by destroying all the terrorists of Hamas and then making sure they're sent all over the place. No, by Israel having sovereignty in Gaza, by Israel having sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. That's how they learn, oh my God, the Jews are back. The Jews understand they're supposed to be there. That's their ancestral homeland. That's their biblical homeland. That's where they're supposed to live. And they're telling us a lesson. We're not going to let you get away with terrorizing us so we can kill you another day and take your land away. That's how you defeat this ideology that we're up against. And that's why we told them, you want to, we're the front line of the freedom-loving world. You want to be predator protected? Well, you got to let us get the message across to this true enemy that is the ideology. And then in response, we got unbelievable reactions from some of these congressmen. Because some of them came back to us and said, besides the fact of supporting us doing that, and again, understand this is very important. Language is important, and it's important for us to understand ourselves. We're not asking, we're not asking for America to allow us to have sovereignty. No. We Jews have to grow a spine. We have to do what is the right thing for us, not to ask the Goyim for permission to do it. And finally, we have an administration that is actually looking for that. So what we're asking them for is when the day comes and the Jewish state of Israel applies sovereignty in Judea and Samaria and Gaza, we're looking for you to support us when we do that. Big difference. Huge difference. And even more important than giving that message to them is having our fellow Jews internalize the difference in those two different approaches. It's time for us to be proud of who we are and who we're supposed to be as a nation and what we're supposed to be doing and where we're supposed to be living as a nation in our ancestral homeland. So what did they respond to us? They said, not only that, you guys, meaning the Jewish state of Israel, you have to be able to produce your own weapons, your own guns, your own rockets, your own missiles, everything, because they know the pendulum swings in politics, and we're going to have a government here that's going to be even worse than Obama-Biden years. And they know that in order for America, because they're thinking about America, in order for America to be safe, Israel must be strong and independent. So they're thinking like Americans, we want to protect ourselves. We know you're the front line of the freedom-loving world, and you can't be relying on America anymore. We have to take advantage as much as possible of this Trump administration while we have it. But things change. Just like we know, life in America is not how it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. Societies change. And another thing I like to tell people, I'm very involved in politics, not just Israeli politics, American politics. And one of the things that worries me about American politics, and I've been saying this for years, but more so now, while I've always been calling out the Jew hatred and the anti-Israelism as part of the whole progressive, regressive community on the Democrat side, well, there is a growing anti-Semitism on the right-wing isolationist Republican side as well. And if anyone thinks that the party is going to remain a Donald Trump party who has truly a big heart for Israel and the Jewish people, well, I could sell you the Brooklyn Bridge. We're not always going to be able to rely on the Republican Party either. I'm just being a realist. All right, and I think it's a false, and again, I come from, I told you already, Trump's election was a miracle. All right, and I think he's not going to dump us, even though I'll definitely have criticism here and there for him. But he's not the Mashiach either, just like Netanyahu is not the Mashiach. And we got also that problem in the Jewish community. Too many people who understand many good things, but you're putting too much hope on Donald Trump to save America and save the Jewish community in America. So I hope I'm wrong, But as a student of Jewish history, anyone who looks and studies realizes that the bad times always came after the Jews made it to the top. Germany wasn't always Nazi Germany. Germany was the most successful assimilation of Jews. Doctors, lawyers, politicians made it to the top. Even the religious community. Some of them called Berlin the what? The New Jerusalem. So much so they didn't need Jerusalem. They didn't need Israel anymore. And then the Nazis came to power. Spanish Inquisition, same thing. Famous rabbi in the Chumash, who? Abarbanel, was the lead financial advisor to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. And it was at that time, ultimate success for the Jews in Spain, the Inquisition. Same thing in Poland, meaning in Middle Ages Poland, same thing in Britain, in England. We were expelled from England, same thing in the Middle East. That's Jewish history. And we Jews have to get into our brain. Stop thinking that today is different and learn from the past. So it's interesting, because I might shock you for a second. When I see the headlines of Jewish Orthodox kids being accepted in the draft to the NBA or the NFL or the hockey, NHL, I'm like, all right, it's the end. I'm not excited about it. Like, oh, well, we've made it, and even the Orthodox are making it. We're in a delusion. We experienced the highlight and the unbelievable golden times of the diaspora of America. Now it's only going down, and I believe Trump is a stopgap. So he's going to try to do what he can and help campuses be a little better. But to think that whatever he does within his 4 years is going to stop the growing anti-Semitism from left and right, I think that's a delusion. I hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. But the inspiring words I want to follow that up on is anyone here, your grandparents or parents, why consider wasting tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars on campuses in America when you can save so much money, send them to a campus, to a university in Israel, and use the rest of the money to buy your first or second property in Israel for your family, and be able to fly every once in a while and visit them? Like, why? Why subjugate them to what has become of American universities? Thinking that they're going to change? You're throwing them into the lion's den. Many of them are not even prepared because they don't understand. They're not being prepared to understand where this anti-Semitism is coming from. So they can't even stand up for themselves properly. They're being forced. Baruch Hashem, some of them are using and becoming activists, but they're the minority. They're the tiny minority. We're losing so many Jews. We're losing so many kids who are just so embarrassed about their Jewish identity, not prepared. And I don't have to tell you, it's not just the non-religious kids, it's plenty of Orthodox kids as well. Why? We have universities in Israel, some of them better than others. We have our own issues, nothing perfect. It definitely doesn't have the anti-Semitism. Every holiday they can enjoy being in the country with the whole country celebrating their holiday. They stay there for Sukkot because the whole country is celebrating Sukkot. They stay for Pesach because the whole country is celebrating Pesach. They stay for Hanukkah because the whole country is celebrating Hanukkah. They have a deep Jewish pride, and they don't have to walk around embarrassed about being a Jew with a Star of David on their back just because they're Jewish or they support Israel. So that's the main message. If anything comes out of this, it's the main message I want grandparents and parents to walk away with. Start instilling in your kids the understanding. Forget about getting the best degree to become an accountant or a consultant or an influencer or I don't know what. That's not what it means to be a Jew. That's not going to the best high school in order to get the best college advisor. No, I'm very proud that in Israel, none of my kids are thinking of going to college. They might go to college. I'm just trying to say that's not a priority. They know they graduate high school, they sit and learn Torah for a year, for 2 years, maybe even more. They go to the army. They're getting married. My first son got married last year after he finished his 5 years of Hesder. We have 2 boys getting married within the next 3 months, Be'ezrat Hashem, one on March 30th, one on May 18th, even a 19-year-old, which is crazy. Like my wife is, what is going on here? Her 19-year-old is getting married. Like he didn't even go to the army yet. So it's before the army. So it's a totally different perspective. Like, would you even think, like how many parents here, right? Parents, would you allow your kid, would you allow your kids to get married when they're in college? Huh? No. You have to finish college. You have to finish university. You're too young. I mean, you don't have a parnasa yet? And here in Israel, I have a 19-year-old, I'm not the only one, 19-year-old, getting that, what? And you're, oh, you at 19? Oh, girls are 19. Okay, guys. Okay. I didn't exist my age. Okay. But in any case, it's a different reality. But I was comparing it in terms of not having to be focused. It's not about university. It's not the focus of university. University you do because you want to study, because you need a parnasa. This is the beauty of the land of Israel today. And you could still go to university and be the best professional you want to be, whatever you want to study. Even if it means you're going at a little older age when you started. I know I got married to my wife when I was 23. At 22, turning 23. And we got married right after I finished Hesder. And then I went to YU for a year because she was in the middle of graduate school in New York. So people asked me just the other day, someone, we were YU together at the same years. I'm like, yeah, but I wasn't really there. I only walked in for classes and went home to my wife at the end of the day because I was a 23-year-old who was married. So it was a totally different experience, university. But again, these are unbelievable times we are living in. And I believe the biggest challenge as a parent, as a grandparent, as an educator, and I want to grow this message and so that more parents and grandparents and educators are talking about it, is for our youth to understand how unbelievable, miraculous, redemptive, literally geula times we are living in. Not to be brought down by the demoralizing headlines. Bad things happen. Sad things happen. But we're Jews. And we're still mourning the destruction of the temple and the millions of Jews that were killed when the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans. We are a people that live with tragedy. We don't allow tragedy or victimhood to define us. And it's up to us to steer ourselves and our children in the direction, I guess, like the Israel Chesed Center, where we're focused on the proactivity and not on the focus of victimhood. So advocacy for the Jewish people in Israel, for me, is yes, talking about the tragedy, calling out the lies and the evil of our enemies, but that's not, but not focusing on, we are victims, have pity for us too. No, that is a losing argument because our enemies want to see us cry. They want to see us sad. They support. How many videos have you seen of kids on college campus literally supporting Hamas? They don't care. So why are we spending all this time trying to show we're victims too? Pity us. No, we talk about how horrible it is, how evil it is, but for a purpose, not to gain pity, but to explain why we're doing what we're doing and to be proud of what we're doing. We don't want to kill them, but you better believe it. If they force us, we're going to do it. We want to protect Jews all over the world. And be proud of the attitude of standing up for ourselves. And not the victim attitude of the bring them home. That's all about, woe is us. Again, I'm talking about the leadership, not necessarily people on the ground involved. We're living in amazing times. And I just want to help people understand that and wake up to that. So again, if you're not yet following Pulse of Israel to get this on a daily basis, what are you waiting for? Go to pulseofisrael.com and sign up. And again, we're a small organization. We have a studio in Jerusalem. We have a staff of 8. We used to be a staff of 20, but before Google and Facebook destroyed our business because we're politically incorrect. But while millions are being donated to all the organizations that are fighting windmills that they can't win, we're one of the small organizations, medium organizations, that is really making an impact. Reaching people all over the world, reaching communities all over the world, and we want to reach more youth because the youth are totally being thrown to the wind. Honestly, the only organization I believe truly helping the Jewish youth today, especially on campuses, but in communities, is Chabad. Chabad. Because they're able to not be politically correct. Again, I'm familiar with the Jewish community, the Orthodox community, the modern Orthodox community, too much political correctness. We're neutered. We're not able to properly give the information to our kids in high school before they go to college. And on campuses also. So Chabad, they're able to use Jewish identity, use Israel, use the truth, to inspire many of these kids and many unaffiliated kids. It's unbelievable. I just came from Florida, speaking to southern Florida. So many Chabad communities where so many unaffiliated, but October 7th woke them up. They want a stronger Jewish identity. And now sending their kids to Chabad schools or after schools and Chabad programs. They just had the C-Teen program in New York City. Psh, mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. They got it right. They're using Jewish identity in Israel properly to instill a Jewish pride. And we need more of that. Because seriously, we're losing kids every day. And then, so that's what we're about in our media and social media operations, and by working together with Washington and Jerusalem. So anyone who is able to either give a donation or bring me to a community to speak to your community, reach even more people in your community, b'simcha, reach out to me. In the meantime, if you have not yet bought a property in Israel, buy one, because real estate prices only go up. Even if it's something small that you rent out and use as income until you're ready to come or for your kids to use it. And definitely talk to your kids and grandkids about going to university in Israel and being part of this unbelievable redemptive spirit that we are experiencing as a nation. And as Rabbi Riskin, the rabbi that I grew up in Lincoln Square as a kid, used to say, in Israel, we're making history. No need to sit on the sidelines anymore. Thanks for coming.